Bravery is an essential ingredient in the Christian life. It really is. I can remember one time I was not brave. I was a little nervous, man. I was in California, and I was taking preschool education classes to become certified to be able to teach preschool in the state of California at the time. And I remember I was confronted with one of my teachers, and she said, you're the only guy in the class, and I just don't see this working out for you. And I was terrified. I was like, what? How can you say it to me? I had a good friend that was like, she cannot just not let you in the class because you're a guy. And so she wanted to remove me from the course. And I ended up calling the dean of education there and set up a meeting. And she was there in the meeting and backtracked a lot of some of her previous statements. But I just remember the fear of having to go to that meeting with the dean of education and this teacher and recounting what she said and being like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe, this is happening. Hey, I'm Mark, and this is your Cornerstone Daily Connection. Well, I don't know if you've ever been there when you've just been scared or something happened that required bravery, but certainly in the Christian life, bravery is an essential ingredient. And we definitely see this in the life of Paul, don't we? Paul is going to go before the council, but there's this plot to kill Paul. It says, when it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat or drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, we have strictly bound ourselves by an oath not to taste food till we have killed Paul. And someone catches wind of this. It's Paul's nephew, as a matter of fact. In verse 16, now the son of Paul's sister heard of their ambush, so he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Now this might seem kind of common sense to you. You might be like, yes, Paul's relative heard this, surely he's going to help. But the reality of it is that Paul likely may have been even disowned by his own family. Paul describes being a Pharisee among Pharisees in this testimony. He was a devout Jew, likely from a family of devout Jews. And the consequence of turning from that Jewish faith and believing in Jesus may have even meant being disowned by his own family. And this may have been what he was alluding to in Philippians chapter 3 in verses 4 through 8. I'll read it with you guys. And it says, though I myself have reason for confidence in the flesh also, if anyone else thinks he has a reason for confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. But whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. Indeed, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ, my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things and count them as rubbish in order that I may gain Christ. Is it possible that as Paul is describing that loss, he's referencing being disowned by family? It's possible. It's hard to say. But one of the things that we see that's so interesting is Paul's relative, Paul's nephew, showing this bravery in doing this. You see, Paul is about to be presented to Felix. And that by itself is a reason to kind of shake in your boots. You see, Felix became the procurator of Judea in AD 52. Now, he was the governor there for about 5 years by the time that Paul was brought to him. Felix came from a lowly background, and he rose to a high position because of his brother Pallius, who for a number of years was the head of the imperial civil service. As governor, he successively married 3 women who were of royal birth, and his current wife at this time was named Drusilla. And I get excited about that because Drusilla is also the name of one of the evil stepsisters in the movie Cinderella. So if you're a Disney nerd, there you go. But his current wife, Drusilla, was a daughter of Herod Agrippa I, and there were many insurgent uprisings during his time as governor, and he was known for ruthlessly putting them down. In fact, the Roman historian Tacitus said that Felix exercised the power of a king with the mind of a slave. So Felix decides to hear Paul's case, and as you read in this, you see that the letter recommending Paul by the centurion. Of course, the centurion then embellishes his protection of Paul. And so if you've been following along in the Bible reading plan, you might notice some discrepancies between what actually happened and how the centurion describes it here in chapter 23. So Luke is going to put specific stress in this section on the fact that Paul is blameless. Every charge brought against Paul is simply not true, and yet Paul gives an answer to Felix, and he shares his testimony. You know, that's a reason to be afraid. For Paul's nephew, running and telling about the plot to kill Paul, that required bravery, right? Paul's nephew could have been hurt. Bravery is an essential ingredient in the Christian life. And if you're going through something that requires a bit of bravery, know that you're not alone. And, you know, we would love, speaking of the pastors of Cornerstone, we'd love to pray for you. And if you fill out your Cornerstone connection card, you can even put that on there, and we would pray for you with whatever situation is happening. But just know that bravery, it's an essential element of the Christian life. And the good news is we have a God that we can depend on. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.